Top 6 Vanguard Index Funds to Buy. Hello peeps, welcome back to our channel. Have you ever heard about Vanguard Index Funds? The revolution in passive investing, which seeks to match rather than outperform market movements for long-term returns, was started by Vanguard Index Funds. Vanguard Index Funds invented a brand new strategy for generating money for regular investors. Vanguard Index Funds, what are they? Vanguard Index Funds are a particular kind of mutual fund where thousands of investors combine their money to buy shares in a fund that replicates a benchmark index, like the S&P 500. When John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, introduced the first publicly accessible index fund in 1976, that represented a significantly new investment strategy. Active investing, in which fund managers attempt to outperform the returns of the market, was popular at the time. The index fund gave regular Americans more access to stock investment by simply attempting to mirror the rise and fall of broad market, industry, or sector swings. The average investor has found passive investment to be more profitable than active investing since it is less complicated and index funds offer lower fees, allowing investors to keep more of their money in the market. Markets typically grow over time. Investors now swarm to passive funds as a result. Vanguard Index Funds, are they a wise investment? Vanguard Index Funds are not an exception. All investments involve risk. But because most actively managed funds frequently underperform the market, passive investing in index funds has become very popular. Vanguard has a long history of great performance. In fact, Morningstar discovered that during the past year, just around 25% of all active funds outperformed the average of their passive counterparts. Vanguard 500 Index Fund. Have you been looking for a mutual fund equity report fund? Vanguard 500 Index Admiral would be an ideal option to start. The first of them all, also known as the Vanguard S&P 500 Index Fund, provides investors with exposure to 500 of the biggest U.S. companies, which account for 75% of the value of the whole U.S. stock market. Investors naturally look for funds that perform well. This fund is in the top third of its category's peers with a 5-year annualized total return of 9.5%. Its 3-year annualized total return of 9.85%, which positions it in the middle third over this time period, might be considered by investors who prefer to analyze shorter time horizon. The standard deviation of the returns should also be taken into consideration when analyzing a fund's performance. The fund suffers less volatility the lower the standard deviation. The FIAX's standard deviation over the previous 3 years is 21.43%, which is higher than the category average of 18.48%. The fund's 5-year standard deviation is 18.75%, higher than the category average of 16.25%. Due to this, the fund has been more volatile than its peers during the last 5 years. Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund. Consider Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Admiral as an option if you've been having trouble finding mutual fund equity report funds. The Total Stock Market Index Fund exposes investors to the whole U.S. equity market and has a low cost. Clearly, investors are hoping for these products to perform well in comparison to their peers. This particular fund is in the middle third of its category peers and has produced a 5-year annualized total return of 9.03%. Consider the fund's 3-year annualized total return of 9.4%, which positions it in the middle third for this time period if you're interested in shorter time spans. The 3-year standard deviation for VTSAX is 22.1%, which is higher than the 17.93% category average. The fund's standard deviation over the previous 5 years is 19.33% as opposed to the category average of 15.73%. Vanguard Total Bond Market Index Fund. Mortgage-backed securities and U.S. Treasuries are 2 examples of investment-grade bonds that are the focus of the Total Bond Market Index Fund. Among its peers in the same category, VBTLX ranks in the middle third with a 5-year annualized total return of 2.7%. The company's 3-year annualized total return of 3.34%, which puts it in the middle third over this time period, should be looked at by investors who prefer analyzing shorter time horizon. VBTLX's 3-year standard deviation is 3.85%, which is lower than the category average of 12.4%. The fund's 5-year standard deviation is 3.34%, while the category average is 10.96%. Due to this, the fund has been less volatile than its competitors during the past 5 years. Vanguard Balanced Index Fund. As the name implies, this fund balances growth through exposure to equities with stability through fixed income assets by dividing its investments between stocks and bonds. This fund is in the top third of its category's peers with a 5-year annualized total return of 5.41%. Investors who like to study at data over shorter time periods might consider its 3-year annualized total return of 3.23%, which puts it in the middle third during this period. The 3-year standard deviation for VBIAX is 14.4%, which is lower than the category average of 16.23%. The fund's standard deviation over the previous 5 years is 12.41% as opposed to the 14.17% average for the category. Due to this, the fund has been less volatile than its competitors during the past 5 years. Vanguard Growth Index Fund. This fund employs a buy and hold strategy for equities in major American corporations and sectors with higher growth potential, like technology, consumer services, and financial services. In the top third of its peer group, VIGAX had a 5-year annualized total return of 9.61%, although its 3-year annualized total return of 6.05%, which positions it in the center third during this time period, is also worth considering if you're seeking for a shorter time span. The 3-year standard deviation of VIGAX is 24.68%, which is higher than the 19.36% average for the category. The fund's 5-year standard deviation is 21.45%, more than the 17.01% average for the category. Due to this, the fund has been more volatile than its peers during the past 5 years. Vanguard Small Cap Index Fund. The stock market has other players that could be lucrative besides major companies. For investors who want to diversify their holdings away from larger public corporations, this fund focuses on smaller publicly traded companies. This particular fund is in the top third of its category peers and has produced a 5-year annualized total return of 7.4%. If you're interested in shorter time frames, do not dismiss looking at the fund's 3-year annualized total return of 9.1%, which places it in the middle third during this time frame. The SMAX's 3-year standard deviation is 26.04%, which is higher than the 19.39% category average. The fund's 5-year standard deviation is 23.02%, which is higher than the 17.04% category average. Due to this, the fund has been far more volatile than its peers during the last 5 years. So here are the top 6 Vanguard index funds you can buy in 2023. We hope you have enjoyed this video. For more such content, don't forget to subscribe our channel.